Okay.
So
we like introduce ourselves.
hi, I'm Orlando Montes.
I'm Esmeralda.
I'm Yvette. I'm Brooke.
I'm Alejandra.
We're discussion group 3. Okay, so who was A? Cool. You wanted to start talking about like your, like Eugenia and stuff? We talk about her first.
That's not pretty loud, right? Because then the guys will.
Oh yeah, I'll close this window. We close the other one. I forgot to close this one.
So we can hear each other.
There we go. Okay.
Alrighty.
So, tell us about Eugenia. I don't know if I'm saying her name right.
Okay. Eugenia is 5 years old and is in a bilingual kindergarten classroom in a small rural community in Central Valley of California. Her family comes from Mexico. She was born in the United States and was born in an apartment because her mom was too scared to go to a hospital. After she was born, her parents got their legal residence under the amnesty law for migrant laborers. Both her parents don't speak English, so they don't have much of an education. Her older brother dropped out of school, and Eugenia's teacher is Puerto Rican, so she's bilingual, and she teaches both Spanish and English to build a strong language for her students. And Eugenia had a very positive school year in kindergarten.
And what kind of like language learner she listed as in chapter 2? Do you remember?
She was in the recent arrivals with adequate schooling. Since she came from the United States. Oh wait, that's far. She's a potential long-term English learner because she was born in the United States and she started school only speaking Spanish.
Yeah. Did she like bring up any questions for you as you were reading it?
Not really.
No? Okay.
So she's from Mexico, or what?
Well, her background's from Mexico. Her parents are Mexican.
Mexican, but she was born here, right?
Yeah, she was born in
Alrighty.
California.
Oh, California.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think it's cool that her teacher was teaching in Spanish and in English.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know when they're like, some of the reading, I can't remember where, but it was talking about how when students aren't like literate in their like native language, that makes it way harder for them to, because then they end up in a spot where they're like not completely proficient in either language. So it seems really cool that she was learning in both Spanish and English, and it seems like
That helped her.
yeah, like she seemed more successful than some of the other students that were like in a similar spot in her, but were in like an English only thing.
I feel like that can help a lot. It can also be a lot of stress on a student trying to learn two different languages at the same time, and trying to like not only learn it but learn it like correctly. If you don't learn, let's say, Spanish correctly, then you make, sometimes when you go home and you're young and you're a student, sometimes you're making fun of, right? Like you'll be making fun of like your parents or your siblings. Oh, you can not talk Spanish. But then when you come to school and you're trying to learn English, you're like the same thing, right? With your classmates, because you don't and you feel uncomfortable. But in this case, I mean, she wasn't uncomfortable with it, and she actually learned from it. So, yeah.
We got Farah. Well, Farah comes from Dallas. And she came here from Iraq when she was 9 with her parents and her younger brother. Her parents speak English. Her mother was a doctor in Iraq, but now she works as a caseworker. Her father was an engineer, and he got a job as a translator for English-speaking military personnel, but it got too dangerous in Iraq, so they had to move to Texas. And her parents were having troubles finding like the job they're qualified for.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, and since it was dangerous in Iraq, they moved to the United States and they got like the special immigrant visa under the Defense Authorization Act. So Farah was at grade level when she came to the U.S. because she studied English over there, and she also had like private lessons that her parents wanted her to have. but she struggled in understanding the English here from her teachers. But she speaks Arabic and she had some ESL classes in her school.
Was she the one that, like, most of them, like, the ESL program was in Spanish, though? Was that one, or was that a different student? I know there was one that was, like,
I think it was a different one.
That was a different one, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting, as I read it in your post, that she, like, struggled with the English here, even though she was proficient in English, because I hadn't thought about that impact that would have if they had learned English in another country where there's a strong accent. Like, I hadn't thought about how different that would be. That was just a struggle I totally hadn't considered, that you could have a student that, like, reading could do really well in English but not understand as a teacher.
Yeah,
I think that's, sorry, go ahead.
she was like struggling with like the standardized test because of its English, so she could do like the work, but like when it came to tests, she kind of just like was scared for them.
Which can relate to a lot of students, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes we're like, oh, that class was easy because it's all science. And some classes will be difficult because it's just exams, and some students are just not capable of kind of like dividing which is which, and their grades might go down. It make it difficult. In that case, that was for me. You know, I felt like I can do these assignments in English, and it was so easy. But when it came to exam time, I'd be like, what is this? Like, I need help. Like, I need tips to know how to tackle these types of questions. Because you can't ask nobody for help. So you're on your own, and you just struggle, and you get confused.
Yeah. No, I also I remember somewhere in it was talking about how with standardized tests it also all seems like the same culture, so it's not just an issue of like them understanding the English, but it like takes on a very like white middle class culture on all the standardized tests, so they don't even get like they don't have much like context understanding of what it's talking about, even if it's not the actual language that is a problem. So I don't think I'd considered how many issues there were outside of just the language, because there was like the accent with the language and the culture and all that stuff that was also impacting. Talked a lot about standardized test scores. So it's so much more than just understanding the language.
Way more than that. I don't know if you were kind of saying this, but they also talk about like standardized tests. They make it and they create them to a point where like it should be something that native speakers like Americans should know, but when other people come from different countries, they don't have those customs. So they make these tests just for one sort of people. I don't know if anybody can add on to that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys get what I'm trying to say.
No, I get definitely.
Right? Because like if you're Hispanic and you come in to this country and you're taking these tests are meant for not for you, but they're meant for people that have been here, that lived here, that have the same kind of like lifestyles of Americans, not as outsiders. So I think that's what makes it really difficult for people not from this country that are taking these kind of tests. I think these standardized tests should be made more general.
Yeah. Or just, not exist.
Or not there.
But yeah, if they're gonna be there, totally, it shouldn't be favoring just one group of students.
One question that I had in my mind about that is like, I remember elementary school, it was called the WASL. And then I graduated, and then my brother was still in school, and they call it like and it was like HISP. Or it's like, it's not called the WASL anymore, so I'm not familiar with what do they look like now, what kind of language, like the wording are they using now. It's just so different, and not knowing how that is now is just weird, because like when I was elementary, it was the WASL.
Yeah. When I was in my 3rd grade class doing a practice time, I was there when they were doing like prep for, I think it's called the Smarter Balance right now. It was like the HISP, and then I think it's the Smarter Balance test. The 3rd grade one was like ridiculous. Like these 3rd graders like just learned about like how to write paragraphs and stuff like that year. But then they're like expected to like read these articles and synthesize them into like an essay, but like manage their own time. Like they still had to be on top of self-management, and I'm like, these kids just learned what an essay is, and now they have to like manage themselves and like synthesize these like 2 long readings. And I was like, there's this one girl that like she couldn't spell. Like during her writing, I couldn't even figure out what she was trying to say, and then she was having to write a paragraph and an essay, and I was like.
Yeah,
it's so weird. Yeah. That's like one thing that I was wondering about when I was like reading about this, is like how different they were back then to where they are now, but we're not very familiar with the ones now.
No, so we can.
Yeah, so it's hard to.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Well, for me, that kind of happened to me when I was smaller, right, in elementary, I didn't know how to do those things, and it was a big struggle, and I always kind of like, I felt pressure, and I did really bad in those tests, but now, you know, I feel like it's super easy. It's like cake to me, right? Because as you get older, you start taking more courses and you start getting more knowledge and stuff. But I think it's just unpreparing the students to fail, or if that makes sense. When they're taking this kind of stuff at such a young age.
Yeah, totally.
Because I hated it in middle school. Trust me. And then I felt dumb. I don't know about you guys, but when I got like low scores, I felt really dumb, and I didn't want to do anything. And that wasn't the case. It's just like everybody goes into a classroom with the same, or not the same knowledge, but the same kind of, not knowing what the class is, and then determining what your study habits and stuff can make you a good student.
I can relate to that because I did terrible on the standardized tests, especially the reading one and writing ones. So like I would do excellent in class, but because I scored so poorly on the tests, I had to like be placed in like the block courses, but I was doing so well in the block courses, so it was really weird. And so I also kind of felt like dumb next to my classmates, but I excelled really well in like math, so that's why math is like my major now, because like that's where I feel like I'm good at. So yeah, I could totally relate to that.
Yeah, math is what, so there's no language in math though, it's just numbers.
I think there is, but yeah.
Alright. Dude, we went on like a tangent.
I think it's fine. Whatever. I hear about Moni? I don't know how to say her name. But so Moni came to the U.S. when she was entering kindergarten, but she lived in a refugee camp in Thailand. She was from Cambodia, and she is Khmer. I am not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that. Khmer? Yeah, that language. And her parents didn't speak any English, and they were also, like, they wanted to support her, but super overwhelmed and, like, trying to find jobs and be able to support her. And then after kindergarten, she was placed in a, like, pre-first class, which was supposed to be for kids that they didn't think were ready to go onto ELL, not to go on to first grade. And the class was, like, 28 kids, but it was almost all ELL students. And one teacher, her name was Katie. And Katie noticed that Moni was like a really talented artist, but she was way more reserved than the other students, and she was really serious, and she would like only talk to the one other Cambodian child that was in the class, and she would like stick out her tongue at her classmates when she didn't think Katie was like looking at her or whatever. And then Katie felt like she kind of started to establish a relationship, and then as she like felt like she got that, she switched schools, Moni did, and because the school she'd been at, it was like a giant school, it was like an urban elementary school, and there was like over 1,000 kids at this elementary school. And so she switched to a like much smaller school where the teacher could give like more individualized attention, and that kind of stuff. And then Katie went to go visit her because she was like doing her case study on her, and she was like shocked by how well she was doing. Like she felt like a new student, she had like friends and whatever, and she was she like knew way more English than Katie thought she had known, and talked about how a lot of the time, like when kids have gone through trauma and whatever, they go through a silent period, especially while they're learning English, and she just came out of a refugee camp and all this stuff. And my like favorite quote from Katie was, "It sounds so simple, but if we as teachers put more effort into who we were teaching, more of the what would take care of itself." I really liked that quote. And the whole thing with Moni made me think a lot about like what could you do at a big urban school with like those big class sizes, but to try to still have that interaction with students in like a personal way, because that clearly made such a big difference for Katie. But if you're at a big school, like what can you do if you're just put in that spot?
As like an educator or as a student?
As an educator, I mean both, but right? I was thinking about it and I was like, what if this kid is in my class and I have 28 kids and they're all ELL students, and
yeah. You get more attention, yeah. It can be very difficult. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, those kind of occurrences, like what can you do, you know? There's really nothing you could do unless you make that as your all-day job, 24/7, you know, trying to cater to the children and be there for them. Yeah.
It also just shows the importance of like small class sizes and
more schools, right?
Yeah. I can't imagine elementary school with 1,000 kids.
That's a lot.
That is so much.
1,000? Could you imagine that? Like, remember when they have like fire drills and they all line up on the field?
Gosh.
Imagine 1,000 of them.
Just running around. Yeah, that would be. I'm trying to give attention to what they deserve, right? Because every student deserves some attention. Trying to give a certain and enough attention to each one is impossible. But
I just never really thought about how many kids are in elementary school. Like in my hometown, it's a population of like 16,000, and we have 3 elementary schools, and they're all pretty, you know, packed with kids. And I just can't imagine like the big cities like Los Angeles or Seattle. It's just, I never really put much thought into that until I read Molly's situation. She thought of like 1,000 students in elementary school. That's crazy.
Yeah.
that must be crazy though. And like with 1,000 problems each, and think about it, it can be very difficult for some students to even go to class and be there on time.
Yeah, and that was also a lot Monty made me think of, because like she had to flee her country and been in Thailand in a refugee camp and all this stuff, and parents couldn't support her, and then we're like, oh, let's learn math. Like,
was she going to school in the refugee camps, or was she just?
Let me just get my thing again. Oh, she came to the United States as she was entering kindergarten, so she hadn't had any formal experience because she was like 5. So she hadn't been in any formal schooling, but she was like, none of the other students really had either. I mean, preschool, but I mean, that actually can be a really big advantage for people preschool. But yeah.
So that was nice. But it also goes to show, like, so kindergarten, she's not speaking, she's not connecting with people, and then in the first grade, she's making greater connections, not only socially but academically. So there's a lot of, like, how do we judge the achievement that students are making, and like, because they all can't be written down, and so obviously in that kindergarten period, she was advancing, she was learning something, she wasn't just sitting there, because
she was just silent.
She was just silent about it. So like, there's going to be those kids that are not going to want to talk, or not going to be able to do their work, and most of the time it's because they already know. They're like, I'm bored, I know better than this, so I'm not going to do it. So that's also difficult. Like, sometimes it is just going to be the classroom and the environment and the teacher that doesn't suit them, but we have to find ways to be like, hey, you know what you're doing, please show me, and like, I want to help you. Which, of course, I don't know if that was the case, because she's obviously gone through a lot of trauma, and so I think she just needed that time to like get to know the culture, get to know where she is, and like adapt to the situation. Yeah.
Feel welcome.
Was Katie, was she just observing her from the other school, or was she like tutoring her?
Yeah, it was something like she kind of did tutor, but it was more like she went in for the purpose of the case study and like hung out with her, but I think she was also helping her along the way, if I remember correctly. And kind of along the lines of what you were talking about, Kate, like she listed like 5 things specifically of how her experience would influence her in the future, and I thought they were really cool. First one was, I will expend more effort in getting to know my students personally. I will provide individual time for each student as often as possible. I will never again assume that what I hear is what they know. Like, that's what you were talking about, what they might be silent, but they're still getting a lot from it. I will arrange my classroom/curriculum around the whole, real, purposeful, meaning-filled experiences, and I will find value and exploit each student's contributions and talents. I liked that. That's on page 3, if anyone wants to ever look at that. But I just thought that was cool, and thinking about even in a big school, she was still like gonna try to take those things back with her.
Is that it? For,
Yeah, if anyone has anything to know.
you have another one, right?
Yeah.
Did I only get 1, or was that's just what I got?
I got 1, but there was like 3 kids.
Because I got 1, but it had like a little comma, and I don't know what that was like.
I think some people, like, maybe it means you got more later on. Like, if you only got 1 section, like maybe later on you got more sections than the rest of us or something. I don't know.
Oh, I'm just making. I don't want to be like.
I had 2, but.
He got 1, I got 2. What's up with
we
that?
hate you now, Orlando.
I let you know I was the last one to get a letter too. So.
Right. You didn't pick your letter. Okay, so Osman. Okay, this one just like overwhelmed me thinking about it. So he fled Somalia with his mom and his extended family when he was 5 years old. And his father was killed in Somalia in a clan conflict before they fled. And they lived in a refugee camp in Kenya. And he attended some classes occasionally, but it was so focused on just like surviving, so he wasn't doing any kind of formal education. And then they moved to the U.S. when he was 12 years old, and it was his first experience with formal schooling. So talked about how he brought lots of experiences with him because his life was very different than everyone else's for his first 12 years, but none of them helped him understand how the school system worked. And he couldn't read or write in Somali, and he had no previous schooling, but he's expected to like learn English and get up to the like understand the content matter like all simultaneously. And his parents had very little formal education, and they're also overwhelmed and like trying to adjust to their new life here. And the climate's super different. Like it had been super hot, and now he's in Minneapolis, and he's in a big city, which is so different than the refugee camp. And he only has 5 years until he's supposed to graduate high school, and he's supposed to like acquire all those skills you're supposed to have. And he only has 5 years. And like I read it, and it said like he needs specific kinds of support from his teachers. But I was like, what does that even look like? I can't imagine having that come in and like, where do you even start? Yeah, I'm just overwhelmed reading Osmond's. There's Osmond.
There's Osmond. So you as like, let's say if you were in his shoes, what would you do?
If I was what?
In his shoes.
I have I just so cannot imagine being.
Like, would you just give up at school?
I feel like
get a
it'd be
job?
so easy. I feel like it'd be so discouraging to be in the school system unless you had someone who was really helping you out. Like, I feel like that'd be super easy to just.
Because I've seen that happen a lot of times. I've seen people that come and they're 17, 18, and they have. I mean, you can only be in high school, right? I mean, like when you're like the lady's 21, right?
I think so, yeah.
So I mean, they have like 2 or 3 years to do what everybody's doing. If they're not used to it, like they've never seen this kind of experience, this new language, and they expect it. So what do? You know?
Yeah.
Do they study? Do they keep on studying? Or what? So.
Well, something to drop out just to go to work, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like work will be like the only useful,
for them.
useful thing than going to school for 3 years and then being like, oh, you can't get a diploma.
Can't even, yeah.
So instead of like, or maybe you go to like do like a GD program and then from there, and then what, like apply to college, and then it must be very difficult for them. And honestly, I would just go to work, but I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. I'm interested in what the specific kinds of support would be. Like it said that, and I was like, what even is that? But then I was like, maybe it'll go on later, and then I was like, no. I'd be interested in knowing like what he ended up doing, but I didn't.
Yeah, right. Like I want to know more about that. It's just like okay. Anybody else?
Should we, I'm just gonna tie in that he was the one with like newly arrived students with limited schooling, but it's so difficult to like try to compare that with such an extreme example, you know, because it's like, oh, they're gonna have a hard time adjusting to school and they're gonna perform low on standardized tests. Well, yeah, if you've never gone to school before and your dad kind of was just murdered, then yeah, I'd imagine it'd be kind of difficult, but
Right.
So yeah, that's the example I gave, Osman, and then I'm not sure
Oh, yeah.
who else.
I'm reading that now. Oh, and then whoever was who was C, was that you?
Yeah.
I underlined it is important that we as pre-service teachers see the importance of their contributions in the classroom and that we do not limit their learning due to their own bias.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, are we good there?
Yeah.
Okay. The two people, one is Salvador, and he began school in kindergarten, so I believe he was born here, but he has trouble reading in both English and Spanish. And in kindergarten, he was placed in a bilingual classroom, so they were taught in both Spanish and English. But then in first grade, they decided to put him in an entirely English classroom, and he did very poorly in that, and would act out at school a lot, and just wasn't willing to learn. And his mom was with him in the house, but his dad would like go back to Mexico to work, or he'd just be all over the place. And when he was there, he'd always act out when his father was around. And it says that the teachers like couldn't prove anything, but they were suspecting that there was violence in the house whenever the father was around. And so it talks about how his mom would try to help out as well. His mom was learning English, but he wasn't like willing to accept the help, and it's just really complicated. And But eventually it goes on to see how he went on to second grade and it was in another bilingual classroom and he did a lot better there because he was able to continue learning Spanish and English at the same time, which is difficult, but apparently it's what you need, which is also hard for me because I feel like, I don't know, I took ELL up to first grade and then they're like, okay, you're good, but I never like learned or received any instruction in Spanish, so I'm kind of curious as to how that would have been different, like school-wise. Yeah, so that's one example.
Was Salvatore the one that flunked?
I don't
And then he had
think
that
he
other,
did.
the next grade teacher kind of helped him
Yes, he
get
did.
past it.
Yep, so second year he
It
kind of
was-
flunked, and
it was
then
like-
third year he did a lot better
Yeah.
with the help of his other teacher.
And his teacher was Francisco,
And-
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just,
And that was also something else, because the teacher that did help him out was like a Hispanic role model that was able to be like there and demonstrate, hey, you need to keep getting a good education. And so I think that was important in and of itself.
Was that Francisco?
Mm-hmm.
Like, was he male teacher?
Male.
I think, like, since,
And he
There's
needed
not
that
a lot
father
of-
presence.
yeah, it helped a lot.
Yeah, and then other article I remember, like, it talked about the importance of, like, expanding the diversity
Yeah.
in, changing demographics and closing the achievement gap, because it's like, white, middle-class women that teach. That one was hard for me, because I was like, I am a white, because I was, like, reading it, and I was like, yeah, and I remember, like, I talked about that in one of my classes first quarter in Woodring. We talked a lot about how the demographic needs to change with teachers, and I'm like, and I completely fit the demographic. So I read this thing, and I'm like, well, okay, what do I do with that as a white middle-class woman?
Dye your hair.
That solves it. There we go.
As I was reading, I was thinking about you. I was
Yeah.
like, I wonder what she's thinking reading this. I
Yeah,
was just
yeah.
like,
In every conversation, like, I totally see the importance in that, and
yeah.
I'm sure once you can get more people of color and more men into teaching, like, that demographic will start changing because people can, like, see themselves. But it's so hard being like, yes, that is important, and what is something, like, I can do to help that, because I just fit the demographic that goes into teaching.
But I mean, in your case, you can just learn a lot about different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Because there'll be people, believe it or not, that are from the same culture of the students, but they kind of transform themselves to American culture.
Right.
And they know
They
nothing,
lost it.
you know, and they lost it, and they don't know how to connect, and
Mm-hmm.
or sometimes even worse, they're trying to like take away the culture from the students. And, no,
Right.
you gotta be American. You gotta
Mhm.
do this. You gotta think like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think cultures can have to do with helping.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, it's on you.
Right.
It's on you, but
All on
okay,
me.
it's on you.
Change the whole education system.
Man. So you just had
Oh,
Salvador?
Salvador, and then I'm gonna say two, but that's probably wrong. So he's from Thailand, and his family moved to California, and he was born in California. And his parents are divorced, which is like a big deal in his culture, in the Hmong culture. And so most of the time we talked about his dad and how his dad doesn't speak English and had a lot of trouble finding work. And he's involved in an area where there's a lot of gang violence, and his older brother was in a gang and like eventually dropped out of school. And when he does go to school, it's like 2-3 days a week, and then like people, it says that the teacher noticed that people don't like him, and I'm like, that's really sad. But there was a lot of pressure in that, and he speaks English, he's proficient, but his test scores were always fairly low. And I think in the end it says that he ended up making it through like 8th grade, and that was really tough and a good achievement for him. But then once he transferred to a continuant school, and I don't know what that means, probably more like a
Second
alternative school. I think we have one of those in our district, but yeah, they said that once he transfers there isn't like a lot of hope for them. I think that's just so sad, like knowing, oh, we're gonna send you away to another school, but who knows what's gonna happen to you once you're there. Yeah. And I think he did drop out eventually.
Sad.
Yeah.
Didn't his like father try to he tried to support him as much as he could, even though he didn't know English and he was having a hard time finding a job? But I remember reading that his father tried to help him.
His dad and his teacher would like make contracts and be like, oh, please sign this every time that he does his work, and we're gonna form a community. So that was a good effort in like bridging the gap between home and school. But at the same time, it was like the last 3-4 months of that school year, and it wasn't enough time.
Kind of too little, too late kind of thing.
I just kind of want to comment on, you know, how, is that how we're going to pronounce his name? Since he had to transfer to a continuum school, it just kind of reminded me, so in my hometown we have, you know, high school, and then we have another high school that's like the alternative high school. So kids that like fall behind credits or something, they transfer over to that school so that way they could help them graduate on time, or like, and also for students that, you know, had to like, and it was just so weird because it was, I remember in high school a lot of people would like stigmatize this alternative high school, and like I was like, oh, if you go there, it's like they said it's like over, I guess. But and I just remember that was like, that happened a lot, and like even just with my parents, it just, everyone had this idea that, oh, if you go there it's because you know, you're not gonna graduate and blah 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 blah. But then my brothers ended up going there. They ended up switching to that alternative high school, and it turns out to be like one of the best decisions that they made, because they had smaller classes, they focused on, the classes were longer, and it was just, they just felt like they had more attention than they did in the other high school. And so it's just weird to see how, I just never thought about how some people would like stereotype the alternative high schools, when in reality they could also be beneficial for the student.
Yeah. I had a similar thing. My school district had an alternative high school, and we were like, whoo, and then I had 2 friends that ended up going there, and it like, they went from hating school to really, like, they actually really enjoyed it, and they were doing well.
Yeah, and
so
graduating early too.
Yeah. Clearly doesn't work for everyone.
Like 4-2.
But that's what like came into my mind after I read his story. So.
Okay, I'll go next. Alright, so I got a little girl named Sharma. Her parents are from India. But she was born in California. She speaks Punjabi, which is the language in India, right? And so she grew up in California. She actually went to school. She started kindergarten, but her parents will often move from India to America, back and forth, for financial reasons and stuff. And even in the States, they'll move a lot. So I think that will really like create like a wall and barriers for her to actually learn English. Because believe it or not, when you're young, like everybody knows, right? Your brain is developing so fast that you just suck everything up. And having her parents move so much created, like I said, some challenges for her, because she couldn't finish. She would come in the beginning and then leave, and then come in the middle and then leave, and then go in. And she didn't get all the tools you needed to actually speak, learn English like she should have. And at the end, her parents end up actually settling down outside in the rural area where the school is much smaller, and actually got jobs, and it was like permanent spot. I think they stayed there for a couple of years, 5 or 6. And so she started kindergarten and started her whole process in school, and she really had no problem learning English. She was actually really proficient in that. It's just that she had trouble communicating with other classmates because they were from different cultures. They talked about how the only program that the school had of ELL was Spanish, and she didn't connect with Spanish because she wasn't Hispanic, she wasn't Latina, she wasn't. So it was very difficult for her to actually get that boost of, energy, boost of, you can do it, you do this, do that. And I think that's what the challenges for her were to actually learn English at the full potential that she could have. And other than that, that's pretty much it. And she was really religious, which means that she would go to temple, and at temple, she was practiced different language, which is Punjabi, right? She would practice, and then at school she would practice English, which I think some of us can connect, right? With like at home you practice Spanish, but I mean at school we have to talk in English, and so I think that kind of made it difficult for her too as well. But overall, she was a good student.
Was she the one that said she was learning more Spanish than English because of the ELL class?
Yeah. At the end, she did connect with the students after a while, and she opened up and she was more. So that's how she learned more. But in the beginning, it was very difficult for her. I mean, you can imagine, right, going to a school and nobody speaks your language, nobody can connect with your culture. Be like, oh yeah, I go to temple too. And it can be kind of frightening at a very young age. As adults, you really don't really see it as necessary, right? You can care less. Even though it's beneficial, but you're like, well, I guess I'm just studying at home. Pass my classes with passing grades, but at a very young age, it's difficult.
Imagine going back and forth between India and the U.S. All the like, oh.
Yeah.
And also like, you know, teachers could never. I would think it would be so hard to like get to know her well enough and like what her strengths were and like what she needed more support in. Like, oh, that'd be so hard.
It's difficult, and especially a place that's far. I mean, like you can understand like USA with Mexico, USA with Canada, but the other side of the world.
Yeah.
That different culture, like completely different culture from America culture. So, I had a question on it. Because I know, I mean, some teachers do, some educators do try, but I feel like it should be like, we should apply it to every school and make like our classroom like a welcoming environment for all cultures. Not just have like American posters or American theme classroom, but like a variety. So when you go in that classroom as a young, student, you feel welcome and you can talk, if you want to talk your native language, or you can, like, I don't know, like do activities where like, oh, everybody's gonna talk about their culture and.
Yeah. I also think it's so important to do that in a way. I talked about in the like Rios article too. Do that in a way where it's not just like some token multicultural week and then that's all you do.
Yeah,
But do it in a but like all the way from like the assignments given to like how discipline happens. Like they were talking about how like all of that. And Education 370. That's one that's about equity issues in education stuff and like making sure that it's not just like token like multicultural education, but it's actually like all aspects of your education is multicultural.
A little bit here, a little bit there. So just making like, 2 days we're just gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Learn about this culture. Done.
Yeah, I think that will help and get students more involved.
And also, all these students like have so much experience that most people don't have. Like all of them, their stories are incredible, and they're bringing so much experience, and that can be such a benefit in a classroom. But instead, it's completely.
It's like the shun.
Yeah, it's like
put on mute and.
Yeah, they're like just catch up with where all these students
like
are.
Their incredible stories are. They feel like it's just like there's no point to me talking about it because
they feel dumb or whatever we're talking about. Yeah.
Horrible words like worthless, when they're really not. And they can put a lot of value to a classroom.
How are they? Has anyone been to an elementary and sat in like an ELL class? Has anyone? I just wonder what they teach, just like how to learn English, or what are in these ELL classes that the students get?
I'm really interested in that because I'm like, I want to be an ELL teacher and I don't know what that looks like.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I know some friends of mine. Oh, you go.
No, it's fine.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying I haven't sat in an ELL class recently. Elementary school to see how it's like.
You sure I'll go right now?
I know. Nice.
Well, that's the 5 minutes. I have friends, right, and I feel like they really get stressed out with school because they come, like I said, they come from different countries. In my case, my friends came from Mexico, and they're 17, 18, and they're put into these classrooms, right? And straight away they're put into English classrooms. Like they should know English, but they don't. They know nothing of English, and I think it's, and they always complain, they're like, man, I don't get it. Like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I don't know why I'm there. Like the only thing I get is math, but because math is there's no, and that kind of, not only does it like stress them out, but also kind of just takes away the feeling of even going to school. And a lot of them do drop out. I think that's what a lot of ELL classrooms, because I think ELL it's like just one classroom, right? Like one, like they go in and it's one period, and then the rest they have to have like English, history, and science and stuff, right? And then they go to that classroom like to get support, but it's not a lot. Like it's 1 hour or two at the most. Because I think one of my classes, I think I'm doing, what is it, Campus to Campus?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing an ELL class, so that's what I'm going to do. And then she said, yeah, it's only like a period of an hour and 30, so.
Is that for like a junior high or high school?
It's for high school.
For high school?
She said it's only like a period of an hour, and I think it's a period, like just one period. So I think it's that they have like an hour at the most to get help. And
Yeah.
they're let out and they're like, go to an English classroom, and you have to, you know, compete with the classmates that didn't live there their whole life. So.
And sometimes aren't they like placed in like lower grade classes for like the kids that do come from Mexico?
Yeah.
Because that's what I see in my high school. They're like put in like just algebra, like while they're like seniors. So.
And they're really smart in math, you know. Some of them are like, they're just, why do I even come to school? I'm never gonna get to the level I can in a short period. They give me like a year or two. Why would I?
Yeah, I had an interesting experience when I was doing like my practicum in my third grade classroom with my first quarter in Woodring, and there was a student, I can't remember his name, but he was had recently come from Mexico, and he could speak English really well. It was great, but he had trouble reading it, and she told me he was involved in like ELL stuff, and he told me that he needed help on a math question. So I came over and I just like read it out loud. I wasn't even thinking I was doing it for him. I was just reading out loud because I'd come over, needed to figure out what he was working on, and I read it out loud, and he automatically said the answer. He was like, "Oh, it's 8," and I was like, "Yup." And all I had to do was read it, but it's because he couldn't read English very well, but he could understand it. So, but she was talking about how she was so worried about him for like standardized testing and stuff, because in math he was really good at math, but because he like needed to hear it and he couldn't read it well, he never tested well because it was a language barrier, not a math barrier, and he knew the content, but he always tested really poorly because it was really testing whether or not he understood English, not whether he understood the math.
Like if the test was like, the exam was like translated in Spanish.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I was just so shocked when he was like, "I need help," and I read it, and he was like, "Oh, it's 8." I'm like, "What do you need help with, kid?" And then I was like, "Oh, you just couldn't read it."
Which I think will be really, really like, frustrating.
Yeah.
You just can't read it. Like sometimes we get these assignments and they're just hard, you know, vocabulary, and you get frustrated. Imagine not even knowing.
Yeah.
You're like, close the eyes.
Mm-hmm. I'm done.
Go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Should I go or do you have
go,
any
yeah.
questions? Okay. So I got Jose Luis, Guillermo, and Patricia, and they are from El Salvador, and they moved to Tucson, Arizona. Their father was assassinated, unfortunately, and I think I read that it happened in front of their home. So I'm assuming that they must have saw their father be assassinated, which is, can't imagine. They did have a stepmother and I think a stepsister.
Oh, stop talking for a second. Like,
Well, battery.
Uh-oh.
okay. Still 20. Do you have your phone charger? Cool. You can keep it.
45 seconds we have left.
What are we at?
We're at 45 minutes. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay. Should I start over?
Maybe, I don't know where it started.
Okay, so as I said before, I got Jose Luis, Guillermo, and Patricia, and they're from El Salvador, and they moved to Arizona after their father was assassinated. I did read that they had a stepmother and stepsister, but she distanced herself from them, and then they went to Arizona because they have an aunt there, and she was a graduate student. I think she was going for her PhD. So I was, let's see, so her aunt kind of just basically took over. She supported them as much as she could financially. I'm not sure if they lived with her for a while, but I read they had an apartment near her, so I'm not aware if they actually had like to live together, them three and their aunt with her family and then I also read that they also got support from some other family members from El Salvador that they would try to support them financially and stuff like that. So Jose Luis, he's the oldest of the three, and he felt the responsibility, of course, as the oldest child to watch over your younger siblings. And in high school, he excelled really good in science and math, and he just worked extremely hard. He ended up like getting some kind of awesome scholarship for the University of Arizona and graduated with a master's in engineering. I also read that he also felt guilty for the death of his father, that he felt like he had to do something about that. He probably wished that's somewhat what I have posted. Luis Guillermo, he was the most social and outgoing of the three. He talked to anybody that could understand him. He joined a lot of extracurricular clubs, and he was even involved in like the student government, so I'm assuming that would be like ASB. He was like an average student, but he was able to get into University of Arizona. He also graduated with, I believe, a bachelor in engineering and international economics, and he later attended University of Southern California to receive a master's in architecture. Patricia, she was the only girl of the three, and I felt like she needed more emotional and personal support. That's what I read in their story. I feel like her aunt kind of gave her the responsibility to keep the apartment clean and like feed them and stuff, like typical women house chores. And I read that if at times like learning a new language, adapting to a new culture, going to school, also knowing all the new subject knowledge and everything plus that she has to do at home, it was just too much for her sometimes. And her brothers saw it and understood her, so they would also help her out as much as they could. I did notice that there was I'm assuming that the family that wrote this novel, because they said we, or when she stayed over, her family when she hung out with us. So I'm assuming they knew these three students. So she would hang out with the family, and she spent a lot of time with I think they had two girls. She also went to the University of Arizona. She got I believe, might have been a bachelor's, or it didn't specify, but she got a degree in chemistry, and she now works for like a huge
pharmaceutical.
Thank you. Yeah. Firm. So yeah. What I thought was super interesting in their situation is that they had a lot more support, more support outside their school. Like they had the aunt, they had their family, even though they were in a different country. I also read that their church, I think they got super involved in their church, and they also supported them as much as they could. And of course the family that they spent time with and everything. So it was just, I was just thinking how different the situations were and how successful they were compared to some of the other students I read about because of all the support that they received. And even though it did say that I think they were, was it immigrant minorities?
Oh yeah.
They like came here but like they didn't really pay attention to people if they made fun of them for their accent or anything. They just worked extremely hard and they were successful, and it was interesting to see, how that works and stuff like that. So, but yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, that one, when I was like reading your summary of it, it made me think of how important like financial support is. because it seemed like a lot of the other people, like, they had their parents there with them, and these three seemed like they were really kind of on their own a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Which seemed like I would think that would have a really big impact on. I'm sure it did, but they were still able, because they had that financial support and people like helping them adapt to the culture. They ended up like academically like being really successful and going out to college. Whereas some of the other kids that seemed to have parents that like really wanted to support them in the best way possible, but they just like didn't speak English and they were having to work so hard to like find jobs to just meet their needs. Like they seemed to like struggle a lot more to go as far in like school. And so I don't know, that's made me think a lot about how much financial stuff and financial support really has an impact on academic success.
And not only that, like, too, he didn't really see a role model in his family that went on to, like, college and stuff, whereas Jose Luis and Guillermo and Patricia, they had their aunt. She was a student, and so she had that experience as well, and so it was just, but yeah, I thought that was interesting to kind of just realizing how crucial it is to have support and teachers and family and friends and everyone that could help you to overcome challenges.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you have any big thoughts from the Rios article? I was just really excited. I was reading, who was E?
Me.
You? With like the whole thing about like human rights education and multicultural education and like empowering students to like feel advocate for themselves and others. Like I was reading and I was just like, yes, this is what I want.
Fight.
Yeah, like I'm not sure how you do that, but that part like made me excited. I was like, that's why I want to be a teacher, because that's so cool.
Yeah, that's what actually some of my questions actually after get summarized and like say how can you relate to this. Yeah, my question's like, okay, so we know this, but now how do you implement this in like your lesson plans? How do you teach your students using these kind of methods and the human rights education and the multicultural education? So I just wish we had more like, maybe we will in the future, but like more examples of some lesson plans or like videos of some teachers using these type of education to implement it on their students.
Something that I thought was so cool. It was so cool. So my third grade class had a practicum in. I was Shelley Jefferson and like Carl Kocher. And so they were doing this like unit on like problem solvers. It was like the IB unit, and they were problem solvers. And the day before I came in, she had apparently the class was just really misbehaving. They had a lot of highly impacted students in the classroom, and they just like wouldn't listen and all this stuff. And so she like sat them down, and like as a class they made a list of like what they were labeling as like unacceptable behaviors and things that shouldn't be happening, because they were being rude to her, they were being rude to each other, they weren't working together and all this stuff. So the class came up with a list, and then she was like, okay, you guys are going to solve it. And she like wouldn't get involved, and she filmed some of it. And she took so much class time out. Like she did 2 hours on one day and an hour and a half on the day I was there, of just letting them, like, some of them decided to work on their own, some of them got into groups of what they were going to do to like change the environment in their classroom. And then it like, there was this really cool conversation that I was listening in on, because like one group had come with this idea that they wanted to put on a skit showing like what good students should look like in the class, and then one of the boys thought that idea was really dumb, and he like on his whiteboard he wrote like so and so's idea is dumb, and he started walking around the class and like holding up this board, and like I was like trying to figure out if I should do something or not, and then they ended up having this like really cool conversation about like because the girl was telling him how he shouldn't get to say that because it hurts her feelings and it makes their group feel not important and whatever, and then he was saying how that's his opinion and he has his right to like express his opinion, and they were having this like conversation that you hear like adults having all the time on whether your like right for free speech are more important, or whether we should make sure we're not marginalizing any group of people in our conversations and like what should take priority. And like she just like let it happen unless it got really bad. She just like let it happen, and then like they were doing way better at having this conversation than I see adults doing. And so I thought that was a really like she was really giving them skills on how to have courageous conversations and how to do that at such a young age. And I was like, they are doing this better than most adults. And they're 8. It was so cool. It was so cool.
Interesting.
Let's see. Kind of hit every topic, so I'm kind of.
Yeah, and she said we didn't have to talk about everything because there's so much.
Like different diversity in
Yeah.
school and stuff.
Yeah.
Closing the gap a little bit more. I feel like, as educators, we can all help somewhat
Mhm.
with it.
Mhm. Yay!
Yay.
Multicultural education.
Woohoo. Alright.
I forgot to do the little tally.
Oh, what?
The little